So with a remake about to hit theatres, I thought what better time to revisit the original Silent Night, Deadly Night. This is one of those weird movies where I'm going to sound silly here, but I'm hoping you guys can empathise. Where it's a movie where I believe I've seen before, but I'm not too entirely sure. Do you know what I mean? It's one of those where initially I kind of like when I visited this, I was like, I don't think I've seen this, and then you look into kind of like a plot synopsis and some other stuff, and you go, actually, I do kind of like have a feeling I have seen this before. But yeah, I'm not sure. But yeah, so like I said, this we're recently going to get a. I've just got a remake of this. It drops in theatres over here in the UK this weekend. So yeah, I thought it was time to go and check this original out. And yeah, so this is a movie that was released in the 80s. It has a very typical 80s slasher feel to it. I'll elaborate on some of my points with that in a little while. But yeah, this movie essentially tells the story of Billy. He is basically somebody who, as a kid, witnessed his parents get assaulted and murdered by a guy dressed up as Santa Claus. And so he's grown up with that trauma. He gets sent. He gets sent to this orphanage where he's basically raised by this mother superior who is just way too strict on him, who is just trying all these sorts of punishments for some of his behaviors. She's trying to cure him of his post trauma with this sort of exposure therapy kind of, I guess, mentality. He ends up being forced to working in this mall dressed up as Santa. He's got kids coming up, and he's and ultimately all of these stuff just kind of like end up building up to this point where he kind of ends up just snapping and ends up going on a murder spree. So yeah, starting off with some of the things I really liked about this movie. I do really like the concept of this story. I do like the notion of it kind of tapping into that childhood fear of Santa Claus. And I think that because I do think that there is a very feasible way that you can flip all of that. And I think you can flip all of that childlike magic and wonder that you wouldn't normally associate with Santa Claus and kind of like flip it into a fear. And I think you see that also play out where we see Billy being forced to dress up as Santa in this mall shop Santa, and all the kids are just really kind of like awkward and kind of like trying to pull away from him, and you kind of like reminded of all that little moment in almost like Kevin McAllister type mentality from Home Alone, where he's talking to that Santa, and he's like, I know you're not the real Santa, I know I'm old enough to know how it works, but I do know you work for him. And you can kind of have that sort of mentality with a kid when you see all of these different Santas, and they're like, I know you're not the real Santa that comes to visit on the 24th, but I know you're kind of like a representative of him kind of thing. And it's sort of like, and that just going into it with that notion, but still having to kind of like sit on their lap and tell them what you want, that could be like generally terrifying. And I do like the fact that this movie taps into all of that. I do also really like the fact that this movie essentially uses about the first half of this movie, just kind of building up this character of Billy, where you're kind of seeing him grow up. You're seeing him kind of like exposed to all of his trauma. You'll get into a real kind of there is quite a lot of work into his character, into building up, into kind of giving you that understanding of how he ends up kind of being this serial killer. And I really like that idea as well. I did almost I like this where we almost get this slasher movie that's almost kind of done through the eyes of the killer. I did really like that. I mean, moving on to a more of a mixed aspect of this. Um, and I think that the only thing I can really say on a more mixed aspect of this movie is that, like I said, this very much has a kind of like an 80s B movie slasher kind of feel. So it has a very kind of similar, almost like low budget kind of B movie kind of quality that like a lot of slashers in the 80s had. And I think that that's going to be one of the main components into whether you embrace this movie or you don't. I think that this has like a B movie kind of feel that I think that some are really going to embrace, and I think others it's just going to be a big turn off. This movie did end up becoming a bit of a part of the kind of the whole video nasty thing that was going on during the 70s and 80s. This movie did create a lot of controversy, and I mean, certainly in its time, I can see why it caused some of the problems that it did, or some of the controversies that it did. I can understand how it would be maybe triggering for some support groups, but yeah, ultimately, this movie has gone on to become like a bit of a cult classic. Yeah, ultimately, I do think that it's going to that kind of feel is ultimately going to determine which way you fall on this movie. On a more negative, I do feel like although we put so much character work into the first half of Billy's character. We put so much work into his character, especially in the first half of this movie. I think by the time we get into the final act of this movie, I think that's almost all but kind of like disappeared, where he's just going round dressed as Santa, killing these people, and these only lines of dialogue are just kind of like relegated to punish. There's a scene of like prior preceding all of that where he's stalking this one girl, and he's reciting all of these like Christmas hymns and stuff like this, and Christmas verses and stuff, and it generally kind of quite effective. And then and I think if it stayed like that, it would be like fine. But the fact that it just relegates to him just kind of going around and like punish like that, yeah, I wasn't a big fan of that. I didn't feel like, especially considering that we had already put so much work into kind of like building this character up and kind of making this adding some depth to this character. I think maybe along the same lines, I do kind of wish that this the killer we got here in Billy was maybe more ended up being a bit more of a vigilante killer. I think he kind of like starts off as that, and then just kind of like veers off the rails and just ends up kind of going on this murder spree. But yeah, I do kind of like the idea of I do like this idea if Billy had just stayed this kind of almost vigilante killer, almost similar to kind of, that operated almost similar on a kind of like a Dexter type kind of mentality, where he was just kind of like living his own branded justice. I think I would have worked better, just for me personally, just for my personal tastes. And then so yeah. But on the whole, guys, yeah, I enjoyed this movie. It's a movie I could see myself maybe revisiting every second or third Christmas, maybe. Like I said, it wouldn't be kind of like right up there with my holiday movies, but it does do enough for me. That there's enough in here that does have some rewatchability for me. It does have things that I do admire, and yeah, on the whole, guys, yeah, I would give this movie a thumbs up. So yeah, that pretty much concludes it. We'll see what the remake brings when they get round to seeing it. I hear good things about it, so it makes me quite optimistic. Yeah, so we'll see what it brings. But as for this movie and this review, this pretty much wraps it up. So thank you guys for taking the time to watch this video. If you enjoyed this video, you want to see more, don't forget to ring a bell for notifications. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Please feel free to let me know down in the comment section about what your own thoughts are of this movie. Have you seen any of the sequels? You know, how are you interested in seeing the remake? What's your excitement level for that remake? You know, all of our fun stuff, you know, let me know down in the comment section. And as always, I will see you guys on the next video. You guys take care.